I die without speaking up, Hollywood will forever remain a gilded prison. Those were the final words of a secret handwritten letter, shaky, emotional, left behind by Shirley Temple at age 85. An icon of cinema. The curly-haired angel who once saved American film. But she hid a horrific truth for nearly a century. 5 names. 5 glamorous stars on screen, who were the very people that crushed her childhood, stole her youth, and drowned her in silent torment. Now, she speaks. She names them. With words as sharp as blades. I hated them. And you need to know why. Ready? Let's uncover the 5 names that turned angelic Shirley into a nightmare. Number 3 forced her to drink alcohol at just 8 years old. And number 5 treated her like a product, not a person. Shirley Temple was born on April 23, 1928, in Santa Monica, California, USA. She was a famous child star who helped rescue Hollywood during the 1930s. She stepped onto the stage at just 3 years old. At 6, she became the most popular movie star in America. By 10, she was making more money than President Roosevelt. At 12, a producer asked her to sit on his lap and behaved inappropriately during a meeting. By 13, Hollywood had already started to cast her aside. Directors pushed her into adult roles, and producers examined her pubescent body down to every centimeter. They said, when she's no longer cute, she's worthless. One director once threw a chair at the wall and shouted in her face for not crying realistically enough. Fans thought she had a fairy tale childhood. Not even close. Shirley Temple's childhood was a gilded circus where she was turned into a commodity. By the late 1950s, she chose to walk away from Hollywood. Shirley Temple entered politics and became the U.S. ambassador to Ghana and Czechoslovakia. She lived a second life, but the past never left, always simmering, always cold. And at 85, in a private interview, she publicly named the 5 people she said she would never forgive. 5 colleagues once seen as untouchable. But Temple, with eyes that had witnessed both heaven and hell, told it all. 1. Clark Gable, the gentleman who gave Shirley Temple her first taste of humiliation. To global audiences, Clark Gable was the embodiment of charm, America's heartthrob, the dashing red butler in Gone with the Wind. But to Shirley Temple, he was a nightmare in a gentleman's disguise. At just 9 years old, Temple attended a lavish MGM party filled with Hollywood's biggest stars. She approached Gable and politely greeted him, but he coldly looked her up and down and turned away without saying a word. Moments later, she overheard him whispering to a companion, "Kids like that are being called stars now? Hollywood really is going downhill." Though just a child, Temple was deeply hurt by what she heard. To her, Gable wasn't just an arrogant man, he symbolized a Hollywood where child stars were merely entertainment, unworthy of respect. Though the two never worked together in any official film, Clark Gable's name remained the first scar in Shirley Temple's heart, the first to truly wound the child queen of Hollywood. 2. Judy Garland, childhood co-star or Hollywood's most famous backstabber. One was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. The other, America's curly-haired angel. Hollywood once dreamed of the Golden Girl duo of the child star era. But the reality? Judy Garland once called Shirley Temple a hateful little living doll. Their golden ages nearly overlapped, but only one was the true studio darling, while the other lived in a bitter shadow. Shirley Temple was the #1 favorite at Fox, adored and highly paid, while Judy Garland was told to lose weight, wear binders, and take sedatives just to fit MGM's beauty standards. According to crew members, Garland often mocked Temple behind the scenes, calling her that spring-coiled mophead, famous for smiling, not for acting. In 1939, an incident occurred that Temple would never forget. At a studio party, when asked, "Would you like to work with Shirley?" Garland burst out laughing and replied in front of dozens, "No. I don't act with singing toys." Temple forced a smile and talked to herself. "I thought it was a joke, but her eyes weren't joking at all." Years later, Garland died alone and addicted at the age of 47. Temple lived to 85, and only near the end of her life did she reveal the story that shattered the illusion of Hollywood's beloved sisterhood. Judy Garland once said, "She didn't hate me, she hated that I existed." Sometimes, the ones who hurt you most aren't your enemies, but the ones most like you. 3. John Wayne, the man's man who made Shirley Temple cry with one shout. He was the irreplaceable face of American cinema. John Wayne, the Western hero, the gun of justice, striding boldly through the desert. But few know that one day, he shouted directly into the face of 10-year-old Shirley Temple, with a rage no one could control. It was 1947. A studio planned a war film where Shirley Temple, then entering adolescence, would play the rebellious young daughter of a Marine officer, portrayed by John Wayne. In one scene, Temple was to show subtle worry and cry softly as her father prepared to go to war. But due to lighting issues, the director called for 4 retakes. By the 5th take, just as Temple nervously delivered her lines, John Wayne slammed his hand on the table, shot up from his seat, and roared, "You're ruining the whole scene, you hear me? What kind of crying is that?" Temple froze. Her ears rang. "I had never been called you like that in front of the crew, especially not by someone I once looked up to." The set fell silent. The director quickly cut the scene. Temple quietly walked off set, saying nothing. That day's shoot was canceled. Weeks later, the project was indefinitely postponed. In the end, the film was never released. In a 2009 interview, Shirley Temple said of John Wayne, "He wasn't a bad man, but he was someone who should never have worked with children. He treated me like furniture, not a person." Among the 5 people she hated most, John Wayne was the only one she didn't hate for who he was, but for one single moment, the moment she stopped being seen as human. 4. Shirley MacLaine, the razor-tongued actress who made Temple say, "I've never met anyone so vicious." Hollywood has many kinds of women. The gentle ones who are loved. The beautiful ones who are admired. And the sharp ones, like razors, who make everyone tread carefully. Shirley MacLaine was the 3rd kind. And Shirley Temple, once adored by all of America, became her favorite target. Though they never worked on the same film, the media constantly compared the two. One was the innocent icon, the angelic child star of the 1930s, the other, a bold scream queen of the 1960s. With a rebellious edge, and Shirley MacLaine hated the comparison. On a 1982 talk show, when asked what she thought of Shirley Temple, MacLaine bluntly said, "I think she's remembered more than she was ever truly talented." In 1989, at an Oscars after-party, Temple and MacLaine crossed paths. According to a witness, when Temple smiled and greeted her politely, MacLaine responded with a line that froze the room, "Oh, I thought you retired it, what was it?" Age 9. Temple stood frozen, forced a smile, and quietly walked away. "I've been belittled by men. I've been insulted by directors. But no one ever made me feel as small and worthless as Shirley MacLaine did. MacLaine embodied a rebellious Hollywood generation, mocking the past, defying old values. She performed on screen, and just as fiercely off it. 5. Fred Astaire, the perfect gentleman who was Shirley Temple's worst nightmare. He was the embodiment of elegance. The man the world called the dancing feet. But to Shirley Temple, Fred Astaire wasn't an artist, he was the stage tyrant with eyes sharp as scalpels. Temple was only 11 when she was invited to perform a short dance number with Fred Astaire for a special program. It should have been the highest honor for a child star, but it quickly turned into days of psychological torment. For a scene lasting less than a minute, Astaire demanded 32 takes, because Temple's shoulder tilted slightly, breathing didn't sync, or shoe taps weren't matching the orchestra's rhythm. Temple recalled, "Every time I messed up, he didn't yell or scold, he just stared at me for 1 second, and I felt like a stain on his stage." Astaire never raised his voice, but his silence was a refined form of cruelty. I went home with bleeding feet from the dance shoes, but what made me cry was the feeling that I'd never be good enough in his eyes. That was the first time Temple, the child praised as the perfect star, wanted to quit acting, all because of a co-star who was too perfect. Some people destroy you with words, some with rage, and some, just by standing still and looking at you, make you fall apart. Shirley Temple stepped onto the stage at just 3 years old. But it took over 80 years before she dared to name those who shattered her childhood, not with fists, but with looks, words, and the cruelty wrapped in fame. Clark Gable, the eyes of disdain. Judy Garland, the venomous smile. John Wayne, the scream that shattered innocence. Shirley MacLaine, a razor blade hidden in a ball gown. Fred Astaire, the silence that made you collapse from within. No one hid her. No one smeared her in the press. But they left scars so subtle, it took a lifetime to truly see them. Maybe we've been wrong all along. The evil in Hollywood doesn't always come with claws or fists. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a charming smile. Curious how many more cracks lie beneath Hollywood's golden surface. Drop a comment. Which name do you think deserved to be mentioned most, and who shocked you the most? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because in the next video, we're diving into the blacklist of Marilyn Monroe. A list that includes a president,